Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to visit the US next month. There's a lot on the agenda, from trade to security to Ukraine. But ahead of the visit, a US House panel has made an interesting pitch. It says India should join the NATO Plus arrangement. I know you must have a lot of questions, like what is this House panel? What is NATO Plus? And should India join it? Let's start with the first question. The proposal was made by the House Select Committee on the strategic competition between the US and the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, it's a mouthful, but it's more commonly called the China Committee. And what has this committee said? Let me quote. Including India in NATO Plus security arrangements would build upon the US and India's close partnership to strengthen global security and deter the aggression of the CCP across the Indo-Pacific region. So that answers the first question. Secondly, what is NATO Plus? Think of it as NATO's extended family. Right now, there are 5 NATO Plus members: Australia, New Zealand, Israel, Japan and South Korea. What's common about them? They are not Atlantic countries, which is why they are part of NATO Plus and not NATO. You may ask, what's the difference? For starters, no mutual defense. NATO members are bound by Article 5. This article says an attack on one member is an attack on all. It's called collective security. NATO Plus members do not get this shield. What they do get is this: more intelligence sharing, more weaponry and more military cooperation. Now to the final question, what should India do about this pitch? Well, right now, it's a recommendation. Such an offer has not been made by the US government. Neither has New Delhi expressed interest in it. But recently, there have been exchanges. In 2019, India held its first meeting with NATO. It was more political than military, sort of like getting to know each other. Then in March 2023, there was another meeting. America's NATO envoy said the door was opening for more engagement with India. But again, NATO Plus wasn't mentioned. So how should New Delhi see this recommendation? With a lot of doubts. Politically, the recommendation shows India's importance to the West, how it sees India as a rising power, but there is a downside. The panel also sees India as a means to an end, that end being China. Let's face it, that's a dangerous place to be because NATO is famous for using and throwing allies. And that's just one part of the problem. India's foreign policy is built on strategic autonomy, meaning New Delhi is close to everyone, to the US, to Europe, to Russia. But joining NATO Plus would limit that autonomy. It would push India closer to the West. Chances are that will hamper relations with Russia. You see, neutrality is very delicate. And right now, India is in the perfect place. It is a member of the Quad, but it is also a member of the SCO. It is invited to the G7 summit, yet it is also part of BRICS. Joining NATO Plus would tip that balance. Another issue is the level of commitment and cooperation required. Just look at the other NATO Plus members. Australia and New Zealand fought 2 world wars with America. That's how old the partnership is. Japan and South Korea are part of America's nuclear umbrella, and the US-Israel relationship doesn't need an introduction. The US is Israel's biggest political and military partner. See the problem? India's relationship with the US is very different. It is not based on shared history or treaties or culture. It is based on strategic considerations. And what is New Delhi's strategic consideration right now? To create a multipolar world, to build closer relationships with Russia and the West. NATO doesn't permit that. Neither does NATO Plus. It's an alliance rooted in the Cold War era of binaries. You are either with us or against us. Such an attitude doesn't serve India's foreign policy. Does that mean India should cut off all engagements? Absolutely not. NATO is the most powerful alliance in human history. Engaging with it is common sense. But joining it? That's the red line India shouldn't cross. There are ways to deepen engagement without joining NATO Plus, like the Quad or simply bilateral cooperation. That gives India more wiggle room in foreign policy.